As I prepared for my first Pride celebration, I was very lucky to live next to gay neighbors. Larry and JR by that point were very successful, but as an older couple, rarely exuded forms of public affection. This, I learned later, wasn't because they were ashamed, but because they came from an era which saw the eradication of their friends and almost an entire generation. Of course, I had read about the AIDS pandemic in books, I had watched about it in documentaries, but it really didn't hit home for me until Larry gave me one of his address books. In it, he said that any name marked with a black X was a man who died of AIDS. As I flipped through it, I was shocked to find not just a handful of names, but page after page of names marked with a black X. It was heartbreaking to hear a man say there were days I had to choose which funeral to go to. It was at that point that I realized that Pride was much more than a parade and festival. As the 40th anniversary of Long Beach Pride approaches, and a new human virus has prevented it from parading down the streets of Ocean Boulevard, we felt it both necessary and beautiful to celebrate its history and the many anecdotes that made it be. In 1983, the LGBTQ community faced a national crisis in health, civil rights, and politics, and that included Long Beach.
I'm not going to break down the numbers and categories of those we've lost.
Although AIDS was first identified in 1981, then President Ronald Reagan avoided mentioning it for years. This ushered in a conservative turn in the 1980s that came to define queer people as outcasts and deviants. It marked an era in which many kept quiet about their sexuality, and that especially included Long Beach, which became an enclave for those who remained, for the most part, in the closet. Long Beach was quiet. It wasn't the loud, in-your-face crowd that was LA, and that's what many of us liked. We kept quiet, our neighbors kept quiet, but you can only be quiet for so long before you realize that there are things happening out there that are just wrong. Gathering a small group together, Pride co-founders Marilyn Barlow, Bob Crow, and Judith Doyle attempted to kickstart the first Pride and continue it annually thereafter. The first few years, to put it lightly, were immensely rocky. Then council members Warren Harwood and Ed Tuttle, along with former mayors Eunice Sato and Ernie Kell, were outspoken opponents of the festival and parade, as well as queer rights in general. Former city manager John Denver unilaterally attempted to limit the festival's second-year celebration to just one day, drawing 300 people to the council chambers, with some sporting surgical masks with AIDS mask written on them. 4 decades later, our city's Pride celebration is only second to the Long Beach Grand Prix as the largest event in the city. Pride has not only helped with creating comfort within queers ourselves, but the ability to act as ourselves in a space which, at least beforehand, strictly prohibited it. Pride is the one time a year when the city becomes queered, both spatially and socially. And the beauty of it all, at least for its supporters, is that Pride's inclusivity and diversity is not just for those who are queer. The many allies who have helped the community gain visibility, recognition, and rights are also immensely affected by what Long Beach Pride has done for their own worldly perspective. That isn't to say Pride is always perfect. What many call the dark spot on a bright rainbow each year is a small but loud group of people that protest at the parade and spew unbelievable amounts of hate. When you stroll by people with microphones that scream you and your loved ones are abominations, it is rough. At least it always was for me. Laughing was the only way I could keep from breaking down. And while Long Beach Pride might have provided these hate mongers a space to gather, what Pride has really done is help us cope with such hate. For me, the freedom of dancing under those lights and tents, the freedom of touching someone, the freedom of not thinking someone is lurking in the shadows to hurt me, the freedom of love, that is Pride. And I know I owe it to the people who defied Long Beach politicians nearly 4 decades ago. It is their vision that countless LGBTQ people, both young and seasoned, have been able to find a space of love. The history of Pride in Long Beach was and never will be an easy one, but it's an essential one to tell.